Hey y'all, it's Zeke, and I'm back. I think it's starting to rain. What am I supposed to do? I'm outside. But we're going to continue on anyway. All right. Today we're going to talk about Jackson and the Tariff of Abominations. Tariff of Abominations. What's that all about? Well, in 1828, when Jackson came into office, he already had something going on here with all these taxes. And let me tell you, these tariffs that were passed, the protective tariffs that the imports that were coming into this country cost way too much money. Way too much money. Understand? Northern manufacturers and Western farmers like the tariff because they're getting more people to buy their stuff instead of buying stuff that's coming from other countries. Okay? So, high prices on foreign goods made it easier for them to sell their products at a lower cost. It was good for America, but not all of America. All right, don't forget there's three sections of this country: the North, the West, and the South. There's going to be problems. There's always going to be problems. So, because the South used mostly imported goods, the tariff raised the price on nearly everything that the Southerners had purchased. Nearly everything. All right, so buy American made stuff. It was all good. You could do that. So the American products hiked their prices up a little bit too. Not as high as the foreign made stuff, but still hiked it up a little bit. Somebody was getting taken here. And I'm not gonna go sides. I'm gonna let you decide what it's all about. So now listen here. Unhappy Southerners named these protective tariffs called the tariffs of abominations. Abominations, something that can't be stand. It can't be stand for. Abominated. Well, who are they going to turn to? Vice President John C. Calhoun under Andrew Jackson. Vice President John C. Calhoun. Why would they turn to him? Why not go to the president? He's a Southerner too. He's from Tennessee, but Calhoun's from the deeper South, South Carolina. Yeah, sure. He'll understand, won't he? Maybe. Maybe he won't. Maybe he won't. So Calhoun would state this question. Now listen here. Did the states have a right to limit the power of federal government? Did they? Well, let's back up a little bit and see if they did have a right or not. In 1828, Calhoun stated that the Union was an agreement among sovereign or independent states. Sovereign, independent states. It means a bunch of states got together and they joined to form this union. The union wasn't formed before the states were. The states formed the union. All right? So, each state government, said Calhoun, had the right to nullify or cancel any federal law that they felt was unconstitutional. They felt these protective tariffs were unconstitutional because they were going against their right to be happy. Life, liberty, and a pursuit of happiness. Remember that? Thomas Jefferson said that. That's what they felt. It's unconstitutional then. Well, back to that question. Did the states have a right to limit the power of government? What do you think? I'm not hearing you. I'm not hearing you. You have a right to not do something when you feel it's not right? Did the federal government, question number two, have the final say in the differences of the states? Is it up to the federal government to decide? Or is it for the states to decide for themselves? Now, we're all going through something right now, aren't we? Is it the federal government telling us? Or is it the states that are telling us? Each state is accountable for themselves. The federal government's laying out guidelines. But each state, in this time period right now, is under their governor's jurisdictions. Yes, they are. Yes, they are. Each state doing something different. And those y'all down there in Florida and Georgia and Texas, you know what I'm talking about. And those of you that are in Pennsylvania and New York and Michigan, you know what I'm talking about. So, what's it going to be, folks? You going to let the federal government tell you what to do, or the state's going to tell themselves what to do? The question has been there for a long time. A long time. There's got to be an in between. There's got to be an in between. Now, old Zeke, I'm not going to I'm not going to make judgment on anybody. I'm just putting it to you so you can decide. You're the people. So, what's going to happen here? Calhoun favored something called states' rights. States' rights. Now, listen here. States' rights is the belief that an individual state may restrict federal authority, that the states have the right to do that. So, what side was he on? Yep, you're right. He was on the state side. He was on the state side. So, January 1830. Now, listen here. This is something that was going on in Congress. Senator Daniel Webster, remember he represented the North in that sectional talk that we had about the North, the South, and the West? He was representing the Northern interest up there. He was from Massachusetts. He delivered a scorching attack on states' rights in Congress. Scorching attack. He was all about it. He saw states' rights as a threat to the Union. Was he right? Possibility. It's a real possibility. Okay? Webster stood on the floor of the Senate and challenged a speech that was given by Robert Haynes, who was a senator in South Carolina. All right? Haynes had defended the idea of nullification. Nullification, it means to stop or nullify. Don't accept. Or the rights of the states to declare federal laws. He said it's illegal. He said it's illegal. In a 2-day speech, 2 days. Can you imagine listening to somebody for 2 days? I don't even think you want to listen to old Zeke for 2 days. You have to stop me every so often, don't you? Turn me off, go get a cup of coffee, come on back. We got lots to say. So in a 2-day speech, Webster defended the Constitution. Now watch out there, Mr. Webster. Watch out. And the Union. So he's bringing the Constitution in on this. Near the end of the speech, he cried, "Liberty and union, now and forever, inseparable." Inseparable. In other words, this union can never be dissolved. It can never be separated. That's one thought. That's one thought. I'm going to throw it out there to you. That we say the pledge, and we say to the union that is not dissolvable, inseparable. Is it? Is it? Well, that's one thought. When you say it, it's not supposed to be split up. That's why they call it a union. That's why they call it a union. So let's take two people and they get married. What's that called? It's called a union. They make an agreement between themselves with each other that we will not separate, right? Only by death. Only by death. Well, now we know that every couple that's together, some of them have separated, and it hasn't been just by death. It's been by some other things. Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. Uh-oh, Thomas Jefferson, I hear his words. I can hear him talking right now. So we're going to go to another side of this and see what they feel. Now, Haynes defended that right of nullification, where Webster defended the right of staying together, federal union, no states' rights. So nobody knew exactly where President Jackson stood. Nobody knew. Many Southerners would hope that him being a Southerner would kind of side with them, okay? So what they did, they had a dinner party down in South Carolina, and they invited the president to come. Welcome to come. Vice president came too. Some important people were there, and everybody was cheering, giving speeches. At dinner? Don't we have enough speeches? We got to give them a dinner too? I'm hungry. I want to eat. I brought myself a little cookie here. Sometimes Zeke gets a little hungry when I'm out there talking so much. I got to have a little something to eat. So imagine this. They're all sitting around eating dinner. People giving toasts. You know how you give a toast? And giving toast to states' rights. Not giving too many toasts to the union. I'll tell you that right now. Jackson decides to give a toast. Everybody hushes up. Everybody's quiet. You understand? What's he going to say? What's the president going to say? He stands up to give a toast. Our federal union, he says, must be preserved. Our federal union must be preserved. Well, now we know where Jackson stands. He stands the same place as Daniel Webster does. Well, that's not going to be undone, or is it? Because the vice president stands up. Now, listen here. You got a president and a vice president. They're supposed to be on the same page, folks. But you understand that John C. Calhoun's in his backyard there. Yes, he is. So here, he stands up and he looks at the president and he says, Mr. President, the Union next to our liberty, the most dear. That sounds nice. Oh, wait a second. Let's take that a little bit at a time. The Union next to our liberty first is the most dear. Well, you know, Jackson didn't like that. No, he didn't. Because he just countermanded exactly what he just got done saying. Our liberty and our freedom is over the Union, Mr. President. Now, I'm sure he didn't say Mr. President, but I'm sure he looked right at him. Holy cow. Well, I'm sure there were some words after that. So Calhoun would resign as vice president in 1832 when Jackson would be running for president again. Calhoun said, I'm out. He did that in December. Jackson already won the nomination, but Calhoun wasn't going to be his vice president. No, no, no. He becomes a senator in South Carolina instead. And if you go down to Charleston today, you will see a big monument in the center of Charleston, and on the base it says Calhoun. He was an important man down there. He was somebody they could count on, or was he? We'll see. Instead, Martin Van Buren takes his place as vice president. Martin Van Buren. Well, that's okay. That's okay. Who was this Martin Van Buren? We're going to be talking about him later on when he becomes the 8th president of the United States. Yes, he does. He's a character, boy. He really is a character. Now, in 1832, a new tariff lowered the taxes a little bit on imports, but it still angered Southerners. The South wanted it completely removed. Nullification. They wanted it completely removed. Just wasn't going to be done. You know why? Because Americans needed jobs, and they needed their product to be sold. I can understand it both ways. I really can. I really can. So what's to be done? South Carolina lashes out, and this time they make it official. They pass something called the Nullification Act. Write this down. Write this down. It's called the Nullification Act. And the Nullification Act, it declared the tariff would be null and void, like it didn't even happen. Like it didn't even happen. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that? Now, the people of South Carolina also threatened this. If you come against us on this, the rest of the country, we will secede. Listen to this word, secede, or we will leave the Union. Okay. Is the federal government going to challenge that law? Maybe so. Maybe so. So, let me get into this a little bit more. South Carolina's Nullification Ordinance, or Act, declared that both the Tariff of 1828 and the Tariff of 1832 were null and void within the borders of South Carolina because they were unconstitutional to them. Unconstitutional. All right. Well, this action initiated the nullification crisis. It's getting deeper, folks. It's getting deep down there. Passed by a state convention on November 24th, 1832, it led on December 10th to President Andrew Jackson's proclamation against South Carolina. He's coming against South Carolina. He is the president of the United States. He is the president. He's got to say something. He's got to do something. So here's what he does. Andrew Jackson said, I will send a naval flotilla down there, and I'll send in federal troops to enforce the tariff if we have to, and we'll bring you back in the Union by force. By force? What's that mean? He's going to send troops in. That's what I just said. Jackson authorized this under color of national authority, claiming in his 1832 proclamation regarding nullification that our social compact in express terms declares that the laws of the United States, its constitutional and its constitution and treaties that were made under the United States of America are the supreme law of the land. Is it? Yes, it is. Constitution is the supreme law of the land. Now, where you get a little hiccup once in a while is how you interpret that law. Yes, sir. How do you interpret that law? Well, if you want to figure that out, you have to go back to the Federalist Papers, back to the people that wrote this, and find out what they thought. They're long gone. They are long gone, but their papers are still there. Okay. Now, he also adds that the judges in every state shall be bound, therefore, anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary, notwithstanding. Judges, even in South Carolina, got to go by what the Constitution says. He's putting pressure on now, folks. What do you think? Do you think these people would still want to leave? Yes, they do. Yes, they do. They feel that they are a sovereign state, an independent state, joined into the Union. That means they can leave at any time. What does our Constitution say about that? We're going to get to that. We're going to get to that. And I'm going to let you decide how to interpret the Constitution. Jackson vowed he will keep the Union together if by force, and he will do it too. So South Carolina hopes other states will follow them. And so they start to ask other states, North Carolina, Virginia, Georgia, what do you think? Tennessee, will you go with us? Guess what they all said? No, we will not go with you. Well, why? We're fine. We're fine the way we are. We're okay. We can handle it. We don't think it's that bad that we have to leave the United States of America. And you're going to be able to support yourselves? I don't know, though. I don't know if they can do that. They could try. Now, has there been any other states that wanted to do that before? Yes, there has. Remember we talked about in the War of 1812, there were states in New England, they wanted to leave the country, and nobody said a hill of beans about it. Nobody. President Madison, he didn't say anything about it. He wasn't going to send troops up there. He wasn't going to force them to stay in by force. Why is that? Most people felt that it was all right to secede, but you better had a pretty good reason. Pretty good reason. You signed that Constitution, remember? Well, let's go back to this part. President Jackson would seek out a compromise. Yes, he would. All right. Didn't want to send troops in there. Would if he had to, but he'll seek out a compromise. In March of 1833, he would sign a new tariff bill, and this was proposed by Henry Clay. So old Henry Clay comes to the rescue, even though he don't like Jackson. He's still working there, still working on things. Just had to kill a Spidey. It was right in my face, coming right in front of me. My goodness. Let's get back to this. He would sign a lower tariff bill, thereby appeasing the South, but he also signed what he called the Force Bill. The Force Bill. Now, this Force Bill, listen to what this is about. It authorizes the compulsory collection of import duties. You know what that means? Taxes. They want to be able to still collect the import taxes from the South by force of arms. It's all about money. It's always about money, isn't it? It's always about money. So if South Carolina leaves, hey, what about that tax money? Well, you're not going to get it. You're not going to get it because they're on their own. They're their own country. Okay? It was a signal to Southerners that threats of nullification and secession would not be tolerated. Maybe this is what scared the other states away. Maybe this is what told them, we're not doing that. No. Though this effectively did bring the Constitution crisis to an end, it did not forestall the eventual outbreak of a war. Oh, yeah. South Carolina, they said, okay, we will come back in for now. For now. So they accept the slightly lower tariffs for now, and they repealed the Nullification Act. There you go. Problem solved. No, problem is not solved. Why not, Zeke? Nothing's happening. Because South Carolina will never forget what happened in 1832. They won't forget. In 1860, it's going to come around again. South Carolina is going to be the first state to say, we're leaving. And who will go with us this time? 6 other states went with them that time. Oh my. Oh my. Eventually, 11 states would leave. They secede. That's what we're talking about. So let's talk about the secession idea for a second, can we? Among the founding fathers, there was no doubt the United States had just seceded from the British Empire in 1776. When they wrote that Declaration of Independence, they seceded. They left the British Empire. They exercised the right of the people to alter or to abolish by force, if necessary, a bad government. The Declaration of Independence is the most famous document and the most famous act of secession in our history. Though modern talk makes secession sound somehow different, like you're a traitor or like it's sinister. By claiming independence. Independence is what? Freedom. Freedom from what? Madison and Hamilton now hoped secession would never happen, even though they knew it could. But they never denied that it was a right and a practical possibility. They said it could happen. Was it a right? They never denied it wasn't. They never said it wasn't. Is that word, secession, in the Constitution? No, it's not. It is not in the Constitution. Now, these two men, envisioned the people taking arms against the federal government if it exceeded its delegated powers or invaded their rights, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, and admitted that this would be justified. They said it could be justified. Secession included the resort to taking up arms, taking up guns, was the final remedy against what? Tyranny. Tyranny. That means a government that is coming against you, coming against your state. That's one of the real points why they had that Second Amendment. People have a right to bear arms in case the government comes against you. Now, I'm not promoting anything. I'm just telling you how it is. You decide. So they put that clause in there, Second Amendment. But is there an amendment that says you can't secede? Or is there an amendment that says that you can secede? That word is not in the Constitution. So we have to kind of interpret. And I'm telling you, people have interpreted this law since they first wrote this document out called the Constitution. I remember was when New England wanted to secede, nobody said a thing. Most people thought it was okay. You want to go? Go. We don't need you anyway. Eventually, we would have a war over this. A war. They call it the War of Northern Aggression. Other people call it the Civil War. There's nothing civil about it. And it was over some states leaving the country. Not leaving by a rebellion, they just left and started their own country. Can you do that? Well, we're going to get to some of that. Now, the Constitution itself is very silent on this whole subject that we all been talking about here. But since secession was an established right, it did not have to be reaffirmed. People just knew it was. You don't have to keep saying it. It was already assumed. Never assume anything, especially when it comes to politics and especially money. When it comes to money, you never assume anything. Now, 3 states ratified the Constitution with the provision that they could later secede if they choose. The other 10 states accepted this condition as valid. And one of those states was New York. They walked out. They walked out of that constitutional convention. They wanted to be able to sign a contract they knew they could eventually get out of. Now listen here. This is a quote by Thomas Jefferson. Every man and every body of men on earth possesses the right to self-government. Jefferson wrote elsewhere in 1786, he said, he even defended Shays' tax revolt. Remember we talked about Shays' revolt? Which was suppressed by federal troops. To Jefferson, he says this, the tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. We don't want war. We don't want to be fighting each other. Talk is always the best way out. Talking things, not fighting things. Here's another quote by somebody that you might know. Abraham Lincoln. Nor, he says, is the right confined to cases in which the whole people of an existing government may choose to exercise it. Any portion of such people that can may revolutionize and make their own of so much territory they inhabit. In the Declaration of Independence, it says that we have the right and the obligation to overthrow or establish a new government if the government that we're under violates our life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. If they violate your rights, you have a right to either overthrow it or just leave it, start a new government, start something else. And President Lincoln said that himself. Now, when it came to push a shove, he said, I don't believe in secession. We're going to get all into that later on. That is way too much to talk about right here. All right? So, I'm going to tell you what we're going to do. We're going to stop this because part 2 is going to be coming up right after this. And some pretty bad things are going to happen to some folks. Yes, they are. But remember what I always say. You got to be kind to people. And this means even talking things out. If there's somebody that's just got your crawl, you got to be able to talk it out with them. Okay? Don't go to cuffs. Don't go to fists. Talk it out with them. And like always, people that you love, what's old Zeke tell you to do? Tell them that you love them. Tell them that you love them today. Do it right now. Once you end this, you go and tell somebody right now that you love them. Would you do that for me? All right, now you don't forget, come back for part 2, which is right after this. And I'll see you all soon.